Down in the borderlands, everyone knew him as El Pozolero, which means the stew maker. His real name was Santiago Meza Lopez, and he became a symbol of just how awful Mexico's drug war really was. He used the scorching Baja desert heat to make people disappear forever. The desert, with its relentless sun and unforgiving terrain, became a graveyard for many. His workplace wasn't a kitchen but a lonely ranch just outside Tijuana. This ranch, isolated and desolate, was the perfect cover for his gruesome activities. He didn't use spices and herbs, but dangerous chemicals and the bodies of missing people. The chemicals he used were so potent that they could dissolve a body in mere hours, leaving no trace behind. Meza Lopez worked for the scary Arellano Felix cartel. This cartel, one of the most feared in Mexico, was known for its brutality and ruthlessness. His terrible job? Dissolving bodies. The process was both horrifying and efficient, ensuring that the cartel's enemies vanished without a trace. People only whispered his name, a mix of fear and rumor. In the underworld, his name was synonymous with terror, a ghost story that was all too real. He was a living example of how cruel the cartel was, how they could erase people and leave nothing but silence. The silence was deafening, a reminder of the countless lives lost and the families left in mourning. News of El Pozolero's activities eventually reached the public, causing outrage and horror. The media painted him as a monster, a man who had lost all humanity. Law enforcement agencies launched a massive manhunt to capture him. The hunt was intense, with authorities determined to bring him to justice. Eventually, Santiago Meza Lopez was captured and brought to justice. His arrest was a significant victory for the authorities, but the scars he left behind would never heal. The families of his victims still mourn, haunted by the memories of their loved ones. The legacy of El Pozolero is a dark chapter in the history of Mexico's drug war, a reminder of the depths of human cruelty. His method was simple yet profoundly disturbing. He used a blue plastic barrel, the kind you'd see holding water or industrial chemicals, but in his hands it became a vessel of horror. He'd fill it with a terrible mix of lye and sodium hydroxide, common chemicals easily purchased but deadly in his hands. These substances, when combined, created a caustic solution capable of dissolving organic matter. Bodies, often delivered under the cover of night, were unceremoniously dumped into the barrel. The liquid would swallow them whole, erasing any trace of their existence. For $600 a week, Meza Lopez stirred this awful mix. It was a grim task, one that required a strong stomach and a colder heart. For 8 long hours each day, he'd watch the chemicals slowly break down the bodies, turning what were once living, breathing people into a thick, unrecognizable goo. The process was slow, methodical, and horrifyingly efficient. The desert air, already dry and unforgiving, would fill with the metallic smell of death. This smell clung to him, a constant, nauseating reminder of the gruesome work he did. It was a scent that no amount of washing could remove, a permanent mark of his involvement in this macabre process. The process was not just slow and painful for the bodies being dissolved, but also for Meza Lopez. Each day was a reminder of the cold-heartedness of the cartel, a testament to their complete disregard for human life. It was a job that wore down the soul, one gruesome task at a time. The place where he worked was like a death factory, an industrial site dedicated to the erasure of human beings. Here, people were turned into nothing, their identities and lives dissolved into a chemical soup. It was a grim alchemy, transforming life into death, and leaving behind only a haunting emptiness. The ranch, a lonely, empty piece of land, became a graveyard. Not a peaceful one, but a dumping ground for the cartel's victims. Under the burning sun, Meza Lopez worked, only buzzards circling above for company. Their shadows felt like the darkness inside him. The hard ground held the weight of his crimes. Thousands of bone fragments, teeth, little pieces of broken lives were buried there. The ground itself felt like it was crying, a silent witness to the horrors. The ranch was filled with sadness, a real sign of the cartel's power and all the lives they stole. It was a place where hope died, lost in the huge, empty desert. January 2009. The Mexican army, following a tip, went to the ranch. Meza Lopez, totally surprised, didn't fight back. He was like a ghost, caught in a dream. His arrest shocked the criminal world and gave a little bit of hope to the families of the missing. The man who helped erase their loved ones, the man who caused their endless sadness, was finally locked up. The news spread fast, a small spark of justice in all the darkness. But for the families, it was just the start of a long, painful journey. 10 years for 300 souls. 1. A courtroom in Tijuana. Meza Lopez, showing no emotion, listened to the judge give him his sentence: 10 years. 10 years for killing at least 300 people. 10 years for turning the desert into a graveyard. The sentence, a terrible joke of justice, made people furious. For the families, it was a hard thing to accept. 10 years for a lifetime of pain, for stealing their loved ones, for all the nights spent crying with sadness. The verdict felt like a betrayal. It felt like the law was saying some lives mattered less, that the cartel's victims were just numbers, their stories lost in the drug war. The price of silence. People said Meza Lopez had a family, a wife, kids. He said he dissolved bodies to feed them, to take care of them. The money he got for staying quiet, the blood money paid for their food. Was it an excuse, a desperate try to make what he did seem okay? Or was it a scary look into how the drug war worked, where life was cheap and staying alive meant doing terrible things? His story is a warning about poverty, desperation, and how easy money can tempt you. It shows how the cartel's power reached far beyond the killers and bosses, pulling regular people into its web of violence. Ghosts of the disappeared. The families of the missing held on to hope. Hope that their loved ones were still alive somewhere, held prisoner by the cartels. Hope that one day they would come home, maybe changed by the horrors they saw, but alive. But finding the bone fragments at the ranch crushed that hope. So many tiny pieces of human remains, it showed just how cruel the cartel was and how little hope there really was. The families were left with the awful job of trying to identify their loved ones from bits of bone and teeth. A terrible puzzle that didn't give them peace, just the sad truth of their loss. A legacy of terror. 1. Meza Lopez, after finishing his first sentence, faced new charges. Kidnapping, organized crime. The ghosts of his victims wouldn't leave him alone. He was sentenced to another 30 years. Maybe a small win, a symbolic one. Meza Lopez, now an old man, his face showing the weight of his crimes, would probably die in prison. But what he did, and what the Arellano Felix cartel did, would continue to haunt the borderlands. A scary reminder of how many lives the drug war destroyed, how many families were broken, and how powerful silence can be. The Business of Death. This isn't just a catchy title, it's a grim reality that many face in regions plagued by cartel violence. The intertwining of money and blood is a stark reminder of the cost of this illicit trade. Meza Lopez was more than just a low-level guy working for the cartel. Known as El Pozolero, or the stew maker, he played a crucial role in the cartel's operations. His job wasn't just about following orders, it was about ensuring that the cartel's dirty work left no trace. He was a key part of their reign of terror. Operating in the shadows, he made sure that the bodies of the cartel's victims disappeared without a trace, dissolving them in acid. This gruesome task was essential for maintaining the cartel's grip on power. His job, erasing their victims, let the cartel do whatever they wanted. With no bodies to find, law enforcement had little evidence to work with, and families were left without closure. This allowed the cartel to operate with impunity, spreading fear and maintaining control. It made people afraid, stopped them from fighting back, and sent a scary message to their enemies. The mere mention of El Pozolero's name was enough to instill fear in the hearts of many, ensuring that the cartel's reign of terror continued unchallenged. Catching him, and showing everyone what he did, damaged the cartel's image. His arrest was a significant blow to the cartel, revealing the horrifying extent of their operations. It showed that even the most elusive criminals could be brought to justice. It showed the real cost of their business, the human lives they sacrificed for power and money. The families of the victims finally had a chance to mourn, and the public saw the true face of the cartel's brutality. The fresh graves and tear-streaked faces were a stark reminder of the human toll. In the end, Santiago Meza Lopez, El Pozolero, became a symbol of the cartel's ruthlessness and the lengths they would go to maintain their power. His trial was a spectacle, drawing attention to the dark underbelly of the drug trade. A symbol of how evil the drug war was, how violence destroys everything, and how strong the human spirit can be even when facing terrible loss. The communities affected by the cartel's violence came together, showing resilience and solidarity in the face of unimaginable horror. The candlelight vigils and memorials were not just acts of mourning, but also acts of defiance, a testament to the enduring strength of the human spirit.